in Vaidhi Bhakti. So there's several elements here. Previously I mentioned that logic could be used favorably also, though we can't simply depend on logic to understand Bhakti. Here is the logic, yukti. He is skillful in scripture and logic. So, two elements here. Deep knowledge of the scripture, plus logical abilities. So he can explain and understand scripture. He can understand and explain it to others nicely. This creates the deep faith, so that he does not deviate and he can convince others. So that is the Uttama. Madhyama. A person who is not fully conversant with scriptures, like the Uttamaddhikayi, but has firm conviction in them, is known as Madhyamadhikayi. So he has faith in the scriptures, which is strong, but he doesn't know all the scriptures. And he can't argue them and understand them completely. So he's a Madhyamadhikayi. So he cannot defeat others. He may get defeated, but his faith does not waver. The Kanishta has weak faith because of even less knowledge of scripture than Madhyamadhikari. He's called the Kanishta. So he has Komala Sraddha. So someone can defeat him and he may get disturbed and converted or whatever. That's Komala Sraddha. Because of lack of knowledge of scripture. So here we have a comparison. Uttama has faith, deep faith, and therefore no deviation, convinces others. Madhyama has a little bit less scriptural knowledge, he has some faith, so he doesn't deviate, but he cannot convince others. And we have the Kanishta, he has less knowledge of scripture, and therefore he can deviate, and he gets convinced by others. So these are all within the definition of Vaidhi Bhakti. Uttama, Madhyama, Kanishta. Okay, so an important point is that Bhakti is independent of other processes. So, the person who does Bhakti should perform the process of Bhakti. And if he doesn't do some of the things, then he's considered faulty. But if he fails to perform other processes like Varna and Ashrama or Gyan or whatever, he's not at fault. And if he commits sin, he doesn't have to go back to Karma Yoga and Varnashram. Bhakti itself covers that. That is the atonement. So actually, certain things become disqualifications for Bhakti. That, of course, Kama, or Bhukti, material enjoyment, Artha and Dharma, which are Varnashram, and Moksha, Mukti. They become disqualifications for Bhakti. Artha, Dharma, Kama, Moksha. Here, Rupa Goswami also gives an interesting verse to distinguish Krishna from Vishnu, because the question always comes up, why isn't Vishnu the same as Krishna? So he says, yes, Siddhantatas Tadvedopi. Yes. Ontologically we can say, by nature, because they're both God, they're therefore the same, Abheda. But Krishna is different, or more higher, because of rasa. Krishna is the source of unlimited variegated rasa, which is not manifest in other forms. And this distinguishes him. So in other words, Krishna manifests all rasas. He's Akila Rasa Ritamurti, whereas the other forms do not manifest those things fully. Therefore, he's in a different position. So in Vishnu we get Shanda Rasa and Dasya. In Krishna we get all rasas manifest. Okay, so now we go to the door to Bhakti. The different angas of Bhakti are divided up into two groups. The door to Bhakti and then the actual elements. So we have 64 elements. The first 20 are called the door. The 44 are the engagements of the senses. So the door to Bhakti means these are preliminaries. to get into the house, you have to go through the door. So to get into bhakti, then you have to go through certain preliminary elements. There are 10 preliminary angas. Actually, there's 20 elements. 10 are considered positive and 10 negative, pluses and minuses. Do this, don't do that. So of the 10 primary ones, the first 3 are considered important. Taking shelter of Guru, acquiring knowledge after initiation, service to Guru with respect. And consequently following rules according to scripture and acharyas, inquiry about the real duty of life, saddharma pritchak, which means that our devotion should be based upon inquisitiveness about the ultimate goal of life, not upon material things or anything else. In other words, we don't surrender to Guru to get money or children or family or wife or whatever. That's not the purpose of bhakti. The purpose of bhakti is we want to advance towards prema for Krishna. Renunciation of enjoyment or anything else to gain the mercy, or else to gain mercy to attain Krishna. In other words, we have to be willing to give up things to attain Krishna. One should reside in a holy place like Dwarka or other holy places near the Ganga, holy Dham. One should accept what is necessary in dealing with the body. In other words, we accept not too less and not too much. Observing vratas like Ekadasi, giving respect to amlaki, aswata and other items. So we give respect to other living entities. We observe vratas. We support the body. We don't do too much austerity. And we also are willing to give up things for the Supreme Lord. And we live in a holy place. So we should can. Then we have the negatives, which are a little bit of a balance to the first ones. That is, first 3 had to do with association, yes? Acceptance of Guru and taking shiksha and diksha and serving with reverence. So, opposite is give up association of materialists. Not being attached to making disciples. Not the first one, of course, was one becomes a disciple. So this is, one should not do the opposite and try to make disciples. Of course, commentary is that if there's no disciples, then how do we increase? So the meaning of this is one does not make disciples for material reasons, for getting a following, for getting money for them. One does not initiate unqualified people, etc. Not enthusiastic for huge undertakings. So that means if we don't have the means and we get distracted from devotion, then we shouldn't do something. Of course, we can also do the opposite, and if there are the means and we don't get distracted, we can do them. So we have example like Rupa Goswami, because Radha Govinda temple there, but he didn't get distracted from his work. It was bhajana. Other people donated for this, so it was not a problem for him. Avoiding useless arguments and spending time studying useless books. So obviously we have to study the Bhakti Shastra. Those things are important for us, for advancement. Other books are not important. And we should not study simply to defeat others or to argue with others. Or we should not study to develop knowledge so we can make a profession out of recitation or whatever. So yes, we have to study and follow after the acharyas and learn the books, etc., as was in the, I think, the 5th, 4th, follow after the acharyas, etc. But at the same time, we're not going to follow useless things. Not feeling misery in any material circumstance. We should tolerate everything. Not subject to lamentation or other extremes of emotion. In other words, the previous has said that one should be willing to accept, renunciation for the sake of Krishna, giving up things in the material world. Not showing disrespect to David does. Not giving disturbance to other living beings. And so previously we also had the thing, give respect to the amlaki and other trees and whatever other living entities, the cows, etc. So we should not disturb other living entities, similar type of thing. Avoid seva and nam-aparads. Not tolerating criticism of Krishna's devotees. In other words, Vaishnava aparads and Krishna aparads, we shouldn't do that. Avoiding aparads. Okay, so those are the 20, which are preliminaries for the engagement of the senses. So we had the 10 angas, positive and negative angas, and then we get the 44. So now we go into the 44. Such as marking the body with Vaishnava symbols like tilak. So we have various tilak marks you can stick on the body. And of course we have our version, and then there's different other Vaishnavas, Gaudiyas have different types of tilak also according to their particular line. So we have the Narottam line, the Advaitacharya line, the Nityananda, Vamsava, etc. It's a little different. They're all a little different. Shamananda, of course, is a little different again. And then we have other ones like the Sri Vaishnavas and the Madhva tilaks again, different. But they're all vertical tilaks. Marking the body with syllables of the Lord's name, so you can write the names of the Lord on your body like Rama. Wearing garlands, flowers, and sandalwood offered to the deity, so you take the prasad from the deity and then you can wear that. That's also considered Anga Bhakti. Dancing before the deity, offering respects on the ground, rising to see the Lord. So after when the Lord comes in the chariot, when you stand up, you don't just sit there. You rise, stand up when the Lord is coming. So these are involving the whole body. Then we have the feet, following behind the procession, Lord's procession. So when the Lord goes by, then you follow behind, like a servant. Going to the temple, circumambulating the Lord or his Dham, Parikrama. Involving many things like hands, feet, eyes, etc. Mind. Archana is deity worship. Worship according to rules involving, this is the definition he gives of Archana. You worship using mantra, mudra, nyasa, and bhutasudhi. These different elements of puja. Generally we don't do much of nyasa and not too much of mudra. And menial service to the deity. That is called paricharya. That is, one can fan the deity or wash the floor or whatever. We go paricharya. So, deity worship is considered one of the major angas. And actually many of the items here in this section have to do with deity worship. Voice. How can you use the voice? Japa. We can chant japa, which literally means softly chanting to oneself. We can offer words or sentiments. In other words, we can express ourselves before the deity, or we can take prayers which are already there in the scripture and recite them, like the prayers of Gajendra or Kunti's prayers or whatever. Recite those before the deity. You can sing before the deity. That's songs with raga and tala. Or we can sing in a group. That's kirtan. Tongue. Taste what's offered to the Lord. Or we take the foot water, the charnamrita of the Lord. Nose, smelling the incense and flowers offered to the Lord. Touch, you can touch the deity. Of course, this usually refers to the people who are the pujaris or archakas or whatever. Sometimes, of course, in some temples like Jagannath, you can touch Jagannath on certain occasions, or Pandharpur, and maybe a few other temples also, you can touch the deity, but most of them don't allow that. Seeing the deity, or seeing the artis and festivals. The roses are blue. Hearing the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord. That's a Shravanam process. Mind, expecting the mercy of the Lord, remembering the Lord. Prahlad is famous for remembrance. Meditating on the Lord, dhyana, which is a more concentrated form of smarana. Acting as a servant of the Lord, thinking of the Lord as a friend, offering oneself to the Lord, offering best items to the Lord, making full efforts for the Lord, surrendering to the Lord. What mainly mental activities. Sevas, serving tulsi, studying the scriptures, Shastra Seva. Dham Seva, serving Mathura, Vrindavan or whatever. That's Radhakund actually, they're cleaning out Radhakund there. That's their Seva. And serving the devotees. These are all Vaishnava Sevas. Sevas. Okay, there it is again. Mixed, holding festivals according to one's means with the devotees, observing Kartik Rasa, observing Janmashtami, and other items. Of those 64, we have 5 important items. Having faith and great affection for serving the deity, that is the Archana process. Sravanam, relish in Bhagavatam. in association with devotees, associating with like-minded affectionate devotees, sadhu sangha, nam sankirtan, and living in the holy dham like Vrindavan and Mayapur. So these considered very powerful. Some things are not angas. Varnashram is not an anga. Varnashram is for people who are not qualified for bhakti. If we're qualified for bhakti, then we're not obliged to follow varnashrams. An anga means something which directly produces bhakti. So we hear the Lord's name, then bhakti increases. If we simply wash our body every day, that's not produce bhakti in itself. If we brush our teeth every day, that does not produce bhakti. If you raise a good family, that does not produce bhakti. But these are all parts of varnashram system, keeping clean, raising family according to certain rules. But it doesn't produce bhakti in itself. So therefore they're not called angas of bhakti. So once we do bhakti, then we're not obliged to follow any other things. What is favorable we accept, what is unfavorable we reject, and so on. So jnana and vairagya are not angas of bhakti. Of course, jnana means the impersonal jnana, the abstract bhakti. So that we say jnana, karma, jnana, karma, dhamvartam should not be covered by jnana, karma, etc. Making disciples is not an anga of bhakti. That, of course, was that they don't make too many disciples was the negative thing. So, in itself, is not. Of course, if we are teaching people, then that is bhakti. But simply making followers is not an anga of bhakti. Acquisition of good qualities is not an anga. They are products of bhakti. So, simply to cultivate sattva guna is not part of bhakti. Though we say subhada, one develops all good qualities by the process of bhakti, we should understand those qualities are not sattvic qualities, those are spiritual qualities. Oh, it's off again. What's happening? Why it keeps going on? Why? Oh, everyone stop sitting on the cable.